Hello guys, and welcome back to another video. Now, as you can tell from the title of this video, it's a very exciting one. We are going to be making fairy bread cake. Now, for those that don't really know what fairy bread is, it's basically sort of like a party treat that is commonly associated with birthdays and that kind of thing. Mainly, now I don't know where it came from, but I know that Australia do it and New Zealand do it as well. And it's essentially a piece of bread, so a soft, white, plain piece of bread, buttered with butter, then covered in sprinkles. And that essentially is cut into triangles, and it's known as fairy bread. And that is given, well, it's not given at parties, but it's normally a plate that is at a party, kids especially, not so much adults. But it's really nostalgic for Kiwis and Aussies, so I thought, how about I make it into a cake? I've not seen anything like it before. It involves a lot of sprinkles. It's obviously a vanilla sponge cake and it looks really colourful, so I thought, why not? And also, I haven't published a really good moist vanilla cake recipe on this channel yet, so I thought I would do that in today's vlog, or video. So I'm all ready and raring to go. I just first of all want to say thank you so much for all of the support on this channel. We have officially hit 500 subscribers as of last week, so thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I honestly, I have been wanting to do this for so long, and the fear of judgment and the fear of everyone's thoughts around me creating content almost got the better of me and stopped me from doing it. And I'm so glad that I am now doing it, and I feel comfortable talking to a camera for one, but also feel proud enough to tell people that that's also what I do as well as my full-time job. So yeah, so from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you so much. You guys absolutely loved my tiramisu brownie recipe last week, so hopefully you love this one as well. This one is going to be a banger, so I think we shall get into it. So for everyone that has been watching my videos, you are very familiar with me always using my KitchenAid, but I have decided today will not be that day. I'm going to just use a bowl and a whisk, and yeah, we're going to see how we go. No, honestly, this recipe is super easy. That's why we don't need a KitchenAid. It's quite a runny batter, so we're just going to do it all in a bowl. So yeah, so first of all, let's preheat our ovens to 175 degrees. Okay, as always, I never know where to put you in my very small kitchen. So first of all, we're going to start with our wet ingredients. So we have some vegetable oil. It's really good to use vegetable oil because it's basically flavorless. We don't want any flavor in our oil at all. So I would recommend canola oil or sunflower oil, any vegetable oil that is flavorless. That is going to go straight into our bowl. Then I also have some buttermilk as well that I'm going to pop straight in with the oil, and then we're going to give that a nice old good mix with my trusty mixer. So give that a nice mix through. Now I'll leave all of the quantity of the ingredients in the description box below as per usual. Now to this we're going to add 4 large eggs. And then we'll give that a nice good old mix through. Alright, so now that that has pretty much all emulsified, we're just going to add a teaspoon of lovely vanilla. So I'm using the Halila vanilla paste. I absolutely swear by this. I pretty much use this in every recipe. Always measure with the heart, because you can never have too much vanilla. And then we'll mix that through. And then basically we can pop that aside and we can start working with our dry ingredients. So I have a certain amount of flour here. Again, I'll leave all the description of everything below. So we've got flour. I'm going to add my sugar, And then I also have some salt, baking soda and baking powder that is going to go all in. And then I'm basically just going to give this a nice big mix through so everything is thoroughly incorporated. And then now is essentially the easiest part. We just sieve through our dry ingredients into our wet ingredients. If it all is gonna fit in. There we go. All right, so we're gonna sieve this through. And then basically all we need to do now is just mix it all together. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. We wanna make sure that we don't over mix it. Just want a nice mix it all together, and then we can divide it into our pans. Okay, so I have 6-inch pans here. Now, ideally you would have these pans. Now I forgot a really important part of what makes this beautiful cake a fairy bread cake. The bloody sprinkles. Okay, so what I am gonna do, ideally, you would mix this through the batter at the very last minute because you don't want the sprinkles to end up spilling almost. Sorry, I'm just gonna turn my phone on silent. Yeah, you don't want the sprinkles running. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna sprinkle these guys at the very top of my cake. Just a nice generous sprinkle, and then I'm going to just really carefully fold them through the mixture and pretend like nothing was wrong. But obviously if you were baking this recipe you wouldn't forget these and you'd add them in at the very last minute, so top tip. The sprinkle issue, we are going to pop these bad boys into the oven. We've got our oven preheating 175 degrees C. We're going to pop them in for 30 minutes until the sponges are lovely and bouncy to touch and the skewer comes out clean. So we shall see you guys when these are baked. Okay guys, our cakes are out of the oven. They are now cooling down. So now I am going to start making the one and only fairy bread, which makes this cake essentially as special as it is. So I have 6 slices of plain white soft bread that I'm just going to butter with some spread, and then we're going to dip them into our sprinkles. Now you can use whichever sprinkles you like for this, but I would recommend hundreds and thousands. You can get these from most supermarkets, but they're just more of the classic sprinkles. They're these tiny little, let's see if the camera focuses. There we go. They're these tiny little colourful beads, and they're just perfect for this. This is exactly what you need. So I'm going to do that now and then cut them into little triangles. A little batch of my American buttercream, which I will leave a little link somewhere on the screen to the recipe. Now this is such a perfect buttercream for this recipe because it's that super, like, not fake icing, but just it reminds you of childhood. It's like the perfect icing for really easy cakes, and that's why I wanted to create this cake, so that anyone, you know, any young mums, this is a perfect birthday cake. Really, really simple, because essentially it's just vanilla sponge with sprinkles in and a vanilla icing, and then decorated with fairy bread. And if you didn't want to put the fairy bread around the outside, you honestly wouldn't have to. So I have just flavored this with a little bit of vanilla paste, my Halila one that I always use, and then I'm going to color it a little shade of pink. Not planned at all. I'm using the Chef Master neon pink color here, and I'm just gonna add the tiniest little bit to my icing, just because I want it to be sort of like a baby pink, very similar to the color I'm wearing in my jumper, because I feel like it would just be a perfect color. Now you could obviously add blue or whatever you wanted to add, really. So I'm just going to whip this back up again. Now, one thing it is to note is that you can always make this icing in advance. Just keep it covered in the fridge if you're leaving it overnight. Otherwise, you can just keep it in a sort of semi-ambient room temperature room, covered obviously, and then when you're ready to use it, you can just pop it back, keep it in your KitchenAid bowl, and then when you're ready to use it, pop it back into your KitchenAid and beat it up for a good 2-3 minutes, just to whip it up again so everything's lovely and fluffy and airy. So there we have my lovely buttercream. So as I just said, I just colored this and flavored this with vanilla, but you can kind of flavor it and color it with whatever you want. As long as if you color it with a paste or a gel, not a liquid that you can kind of buy from the supermarkets, because they're just not as good. But to show you how lovely and fluffy this buttercream is, it's just perfect. Like, it's like a cloud. It's just so good to ice, and it's just a really good option to use if you don't want to make a Swiss meringue buttercream or an Italian buttercream. So we'll just make sure that all of the sides are scraped down and there's no butter at the bottom. And I don't know whether you can see, but mine's just a really lovely baby pink colour. And obviously, because we're wrapping this whole entire cake in fairy bread, your decorating skills really don't have to be perfect, because we're just going to cover it all in the fairy bread anyway. So now I'm going to move on to assembly. Okay, so I have just a basic cake board here, just one that I got. It's a 10-inch cake board from cake decorating store. You can kind of get these pretty much everywhere. You can also get them in the supermarkets as well. So I've got a cranked palette knife here, and I'm just going to grab a little bit of the icing and just pop a little bit down on the cake board. Now this just ensures that the cake won't go sliding anywhere. I'll grab my first layer of leveled sponge. So as you can see, those sprinkles have shone through, which is exactly what we want. So we'll pop the first layer down and just give that a nice good press, so that all that icing underneath sort of sticks to it. And then we'll grab a nice hefty layer of that icing and back with the cranked palette knife, and then you're just gonna spread that out over the whole entire cake until it is lovely and even. Now you probably want maybe a centimetre to 1.5 centimetres of icing. You probably don't want any more than that, because otherwise it's probably going to be a little bit too sweet. So just make sure that that's even. And that's looking good, and then I can add on my next layer of sponge. And then we're going to keep repeating these steps until we have finished and got to the top of the cake. Okay, so what's important to note here is that we're basically just covering our entire cake in all of that icing. As I said before, we don't need to be professionals. We are literally just covering it all in icing, and we're going to cover it with fairy bread. So what I basically did, as you saw, was start at the top, work my way all the way around this top, and then push it down the sides so that all of the sides are evenly coated. Now I'm just going to go around with the palette knife again and just smooth out and make sure everything is as even as possible, and then we can go around again with the cake scraper. So I'm going to start at the top and just go around and make sure that everything is lovely and even, and because we've got that really soft buttercream, it's really pliable and really easy to work with. Then we're going to go around the sides and just make sure that all of that icing is evenly distributed across the sides of the cake. And then any excess you can just wipe off and pop back into your bowl. So now I'm going to grab our trusty little cake scraper here, which is basically a dough scraper. You can get these from many different cake shops across Australia, but what we're going to do is we're going to pop this down so it's a right angle on the cake board to the cake, and we're just basically going to smooth around the sides. Now this is going to basically ensure that we got a lovely straight edge, and that also there's no excess cake hanging around the cake, no excess icing, sorry, hanging around the cake. And we're gonna get rid of all of that and then start again. So we're just gonna go all the way around, ensuring there's a nice even amount of pressure applied to the cake so that we're just getting all of that icing. Now we don't want to push too hard because we don't want to remove all of the icing that we've just put on, but we just want to make sure that it's nice and smooth and straight, because ideally you don't want a wonky cake. Again, this part doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to cover it in fairy bread, but the perfectionist in me is just wanting to show you how you can do it, just in case you didn't want to apply fairy bread to the sides of the cake. Now for the top, as you'll see, I'm just literally going around and scraping in just to get that really nice straight edge on the top of the cake, like so. And that is essentially the cake base layer done. Now we can apply all of the fairy bread. It's time to stick on my lovely little fairy bread. So I have just cut the crusts off and cut them in halves again, so they're just tiny little beautiful triangles, and I'm basically just going to pop them on in all different angles, but I'm going to start like this and just kind of push it in very gently, and then just start placing other ones around it in a bit more of like a staggered kind of pattern, like so. And here we have it. We have our delicious fairy bread cake that is a vanilla sponge with vanilla icing and then topped with lovely fairy bread pieces. For any nostalgic party, this is such an easy recipe. Like, honestly, like, it's so easy. Like, I genuinely can't express how easy it is. Also, the great thing about the fairy bread is that you can just pile it over all the mistakes that you make in the icing, so you don't need to be a professional to decorate it. So it's so easy. Anyway, now you have this lovely nostalgic fairy bread recipe cake in your repertoire. I'm going to cut into it and see how delicious it is. So let's do that now. This just honestly looks phenomenal. Look how beautiful the layers are that have come through. It's just perfect amount of icing. The sponge looks so moist, and that is genuinely because of the buttermilk and the oil in the recipe. So it is such a good recipe, and it looks delicious. It smells nostalgic from the sprinkles. Honestly, I cannot wait to have some, so I'm gonna have a little sneaky wee bite now. Cheers! Anyway, whilst I eat this and have a cup of tea, I hope you enjoyed today's recipe. Thank you so much for watching. Again, as I said before at the beginning of this video, we've hit 5,000, I wish, 500 subscribers, and I cannot thank you all enough for all the support you've given me so far. I really am so grateful from the bottom of my heart for each and every one of yours comments and all the likes, the shares, the love, everything. I want to be doing this forever, so thank you so much for making this happen for me. If you liked this video, please feel free to share it with your friends. As I said before, it's a great recipe. It's super easy to make, and it's a lovely vanilla sponge to have in your repertoire, even if you don't make the fairy bread part of it. So yeah, I shall see you next week, and I'm gonna go and enjoy this cake. Bye guys!